Welcome to another episode of the Managing Happiness Show, where we interview successful entrepreneurs on how they manage to have a happy family life while dealing with the madness of entrepreneurship. I'm your host, David Henzel, and today's guest is Aaron Ross. Aaron is the author of Predictable Revenue, a book that has helped thousands of companies to grow their sales, including MaxCDN and every company that I will have ever going forward, because it's just an amazing system. He's currently writing, or just wrote, From Impossible to Inevitable. I think you already published this, right? And yeah, Aaron is the perfect guest for this show because we all can learn from him in terms of how to manage a big family. He has 11 children. I repeat, 11. And I'm super excited to have you on the show. And I'm curious to learn how you manage all this with your wife.
Yeah, well, thanks, David. I'm happy to be here. It's a lot of kids. I'm not even sure how we got that many, but
it just happened.
It just happened.
Similar with my wife with animals. We just keep collecting dogs. We have 4 dogs right now, and kind of 4.5. One lives at the fence. Basically, it's a neighbor's dog who's never there. So we feed him and walk him. So we technically have 5. And we just added 2 ducks to the family, and my wife wants to get more ducks and chicken. And
ducks.
Talking about was talking about. Sheep, I think, was the latest thing. So she wants to get 2 sheep as well. But yeah, happy wife, happy life. But
yep.
True. How did this start with you? That you got into? When did you discover that you were so passionate about having kids?
Yeah, that's a great question, because for most of my life, I wasn't. Like, I wasn't someone who always knew they wanted to have kids and couldn't wait for a family. I was like, well, I'll get married at some point, and kids at some point is more this someday. And then I met my, then future wife. This is 2009 or so. So I guess now almost 8 years, like 7 or 8 years, 8 years ago, give or take. It's hard to believe. She already had 2 kids. What happened was after about a year and a half or so, we got married. And so I had 2 kids, and being an unofficial dad first, and then getting married and becoming an official dad. So I'd already started to be a parent there, more part-time. And I went through what it was like to emotionally adopt kids. I didn't legally adopt them because their biological father is still in the picture here in LA. But I emotionally adopted them, and right when we got married, within weeks, like I said, I got married, and I just really wanted to have, our own baby. That's the best way to describe it. So when she was pregnant within a few weeks of getting married, and we had our first baby, Pari, and then probably about 6 months or so after Pari was born. She told me, I've always wanted to adopt, and she didn't mention this before, but she said, ever since I was a kid, I had this, desire to adopt. And my first reaction was, all right, I'm up for it. And I think because most people, and I was this way before getting married, but most people, I think, have a lot of fear and anxiety about adoption. Around what if we get like a damaged kid, or are they not really mine, or there's so many versions of it. But because I had sort of gone through and emotionally adopted our first 2 kids, I had a lot less anxiety over it, and I was able to embrace the idea. So we adopted. Kids. Yeah. And ultimately that's really what, I've learned is that, again, it's not, for example, biology that determines whether you're a father or mother. Although there are differences, right? Because we've adopted teenagers, we've adopted a baby, we've adopted a 4-year-old. We adopted a couple of kids, or started a couple of kids that didn't work out. So again, every kid is different, whether they're biological or not. And of the kids we have, 3, so 2 of the kids came from my wife's prior marriage. And I never use the term stepdaughter, stepson. It's always like my kids. And that's, again, part of my belief. And it's important. It's like, these are my kids. And then we've had 3 biological kids together, and we've adopted the rest. We actually we've adopted 4 legally. So there's really 9 kids. And there's 2 that we started with, but didn't work out. We had to find different homes. So we actually have 9 kids. And then there are 2 other kids we fostered, which we, they visit and such. So it's like 9 plus is probably the right number. So I never expected to have a big family. It wasn't something I always wanted. It just happened that way. And being open to life. And it's a lot. It is, yeah, it's a ton of work. But it's in some ways like a business and other things where when you put a lot of work in, then I get a lot out too.
It's funny thinking about what you did with predictable revenue. It was always about scaling stuff, right? So it's kind of same approach to family.
Hyperscaling. Yeah. Cause this is all, went from 0 to 9 kids in like 6 years. We got married 6 years ago. So 0 to 9. Yeah. That's a different hyperscaling book. Now I will say I met a guy who said he was 1 out of 100.
What?
So yeah, that was my reaction. It turns out they had like 10 or 15 kids that they'd either, whether biologically or adopted, but there was like 80 plus kids they fostered over 20 years.
Holy cow, that's so awesome.
Yeah. So like, bam, that's a lot. And very needed because at least in the United States, the foster system is there's way too many kids in the world that don't have stable families or loving parents. And it's not just it's so since we're talking about that, one other important point here in California, a lot of people, venture capitalists, technology leaders talk about the value of education. And actually maybe in the States, because like every country, we're going through changes. There's, manufacturing is happening, we've lost our manufacturing to China. And there's a lot of people in the United States that are struggling to change with the times, which is one reason why Trump got elected. And I think a lot, you see people, the general answer for how does our country and people deal with change is education. But from my experience, people who didn't grow up with stable families or some kind of parents that there's a whole spectrum of love, but let's call it these stable families. Education doesn't really help them. So to me, like even more fundamental than education are kids having stable families.
I think it's some form of education, right? That you are educated on how to deal with your emotions, how to, just like all these kind of like very deep fundamental social skills that you learn, right? Yeah,
it's like emotional intelligence is like the foundation for being able to have like I would say mental intelligence or life intelligence in a lot of ways.
Did you have a big family growing up, or?
I didn't, and my wife didn't. So I had a brother and sister, and my wife had a sister. So, but part of it could be, there's not like one reason. Now, I had a bit of a lonely childhood, and my sister did as well, in the sense of like she didn't have a great relationship with her sister. And I didn't have, my family wasn't a warm family. So, part of why we do this is probably just more love and community and so on. Because even as an adult, I was often lonely. But again, a lot of it is
won't happen anymore.
Yeah, no, I couldn't. I'm never lonely. Trust me, I couldn't be lonely if I tried. Although when I travel, even when I travel and I'm in a hotel room and at night when I'm going to bed, it's like that's the time I really miss like a bedtime routine at home. But having a big family thing is there's so many other reasons. Like it's just the adventure, part of it's adventure. It's interesting. There's a lot of fun. Having the kids play together is amazing. They learn from each other. There's a lot of diversity. Like you see in the news now, at least in the United States, it's all about diversity is the new,
new buzzword,
buzzword for people. And like we're growing up with diversity, between kids from China and a kid from LA and mixed all kinds of races and ages. And ultimately, I think it's hard. I think the reason that we have done this is not for any kind of logical reason, like, oh, we should have more variety, diversity in our family, or we want to save kids, or the reason we do it is just, it's always been, hey, something feels right.
Mm-hmm.
comes down to, hey, that we feel like we want to adopt again, or there's a situation we want to help here. So it's really moment by moment. There's these times that come up where we feel like, damn, this is the right thing to do for us.
It's a very different approach from what I want to do with my life, or what managing happiness is about. It's about applying business principles to your family life and kind of really planning out, what are your core values, what's your mission, what's your vision, what do you kind of want out of life, and kind of determine these things and then follow this plan that you lay out.
Yeah. Well, that's value. I mean, no, that's incredibly valuable. It's incredibly valuable, but just like with a business, you can create your plan and your vision, but you have to be open to how it unfolds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause it's always changing.
Do you have for example, I gave my wife like a max number of dogs that we can have, which is 5. So do you have like an upper limit, or you just like still?
Well, for now, we're like, no more babies. We're a good size now. We don't want to add any kids at this point. But at some point, my wife has said multiple times, and one of her dreams is to have a farm with like a bunch of kids. Again, maybe they're foster kids, or so. And I can't say if that would be in 10 years or 30 years, or so. All I can say is for now, we're a good size. She is physically exhausted because she's been breastfeeding and pregnant for 5 years, pretty much straight. So we definitely need to take care of ourselves and get our and especially her back to a place where we're a little more level-headed, because it's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we have only one daughter, and for us, the first 6 months were hell. It was really, really tough for us. Any tips for new parents in terms of how you manage the first 6 months, or just in general, like how do you manage? Like what's the secret sauce?
Well, by the way, when was your daughter born? Do you remember?
Say again?
Oh, wait. So how old is she now, your daughter?
She's 3.5.
Okay. We have a baby who's just about to turn 6 months right now. So, I don't have any. It's like it's always hard those first 6 to 12 plus months, just because like physical exhaustion. Like we just figure it out day by day. You just get through it. There's no way to make it easy. It basically depends on the kid. Like some babies, this baby's been relatively pretty easy. Like she doesn't cry much. She sleeps pretty well. She doesn't sleep all night. But compared to last year, we adopted a baby from Florida. Now it's the exact extreme opposite, because the mother had been doing different kinds of drugs, like prescription drugs. And so the baby had to go through like a month of withdrawals. And we knew that. Again, I think there's just something, especially on my wife's side, that just felt it was really important and called to her. But, so for a month, she was going through withdrawals. My wife was in Florida for a month at the hospital while I was in LA with the rest of the kids. And you could, it's hard to explain how challenging that baby has been. She's doing really well now. She's about a year and a half old. But I remember, for example, there was from when she was 6 months to about 12 months, I stayed up with her every night, basically taking care of her at night and she'd wake up 4 times a night and give her milk or whatever, put her back to sleep for 6 months straight when my wife was pregnant, because my wife was just having a hard pregnancy and she couldn't sleep well. And so I had to take care of the baby Rose. And, I just got through it. There's no other real answer than you just get through it.
Well, for us, it was a big thing that we, had our roles and responsibilities. That, for example, who puts Emma to bed, who gets up at night, and who, changes the diaper in the morning and kind of gets her going and dresses her.
Yeah.
Because before I was always like, she cries at night, and then I kind of wake up and I kind of wait, does my wife get up or not? And then I'm kind of awake anyway, and I can't fall back asleep. So for us, it was very important that we kind of figured this system out, so we can actually have no drama between us, that it's kind of clear who does what. And, so it just can easier fall back asleep if in case it's not my turn. So
Yeah, I
do you
think
have
that's
any of these systems that you kind of, I guess you have to be a great communicator. You have to communicate well to figure all this out. It's like,
yeah. So that does work because my wife and I have always done that. I think very well, which is she knows what she needs to do, and I know what I need to do almost all the time. There's always things are always changing. But like again, I knew I was on Baby Rose is again the name of that baby. So I was doing Baby Rose at night, and I had my routine down. Sometimes Baby Rose would sleep better, sometimes not. And Jessica's my wife. She had at night, her thing. So we do that. And I think that's very important. Just it takes so much effort to figure things out day by day. So the more that you can have some kind of responsibilities or schedule or plan, it helps. The thing that even for us is hard is the schedules are always changing. Like the summer has just been really rough, especially because every week, every day is different with like either camps or it's just that's hard on us. And it'll be nice when school starts because then we can have more of like a regular
routine.
schedule.
Yeah.
Routine. That's
I'm big on this on habits and routines and just like kind of figuring out, I don't know, systems. I just send you a link in the chat, which is to the Trello board that comes with the Managing Happiness course. So basically, it's my to-dos, my wife's to-dos, and yeah, I mean you're in tech. I'm pretty sure you're familiar how what Trello is. So we have like our family meeting with the recurring things we talk about. And we have our improvements, how we talk about what we can improve about each other or about ourselves and our goals and mission statement, vision statement, etc. So I'm a big fan of systematizing things. And I'm curious, do you have like a shared to-do list, like a Wunderlist or something that you use to organize all this and setting goals with like kids? You have kids in school, right? So what are their grades? Like just like how do you keep track of all these things, or do you just like juggle everything in your brain? For me, this would be I'm not made for that. I have to build systems, otherwise I explode.
Well, it's a little it's a little bit different. There is a system, but I mean it's different when you have such a big family. So for example, my wife is in charge of all like schools and paperwork, so adoptions and schools and paperwork and activities. She handles that. I make money. And so stuff I do, I make money on the business. I help with a lot of stuff. I'm very active, so I'll be driving. There's classes, like I take the kids to gymnastics on Wednesdays, or so we definitely divide and conquer. And there's certain areas. So she's really good at paperwork. She has a real passion for like activities to make sure the kids are in school and everything, and this, that, and the other. So we complement our each other that way. I play. I do more. I'm more of like a playful. Like I play with the little kids. She's more of a she'll step and does more things with the bigger kids. So we work well together that way. But honestly, the thing is, our system, that's like probably the extent of our system. And she has a list. I have Evernote, so sometimes I have like a few things to do. But because everything's always changing, like chaos, especially in a bigger family, there's this paradox where you need systems, but you're also part of it is being able to have like a chaos as part of the system, because things are always changing. There's always surprises. You can't plan everything. It's just impossible.
But for example, I'm very curious on how do you raise these kids and give them, I assume you want to give them certain values for life and etc. And like kind of the things that don't change, like the things that you value, your core values, your family core values. How do you have them defined, and how do you teach them to the kids that they adopt them? For example, like certain things are not okay. For example, lying is not okay, or whatever. Like, how do you get these things into the kids' heads? And especially since you have, I assume, a few of the adopted kids were a little older. So sometimes they bring in different things. They, it's not all organically grown on your soil. So.
Well, I know we haven't really written them down, but I think it's like by our behavior and by our parenting, we could, I think, but like by now we could probably write down some values. Like it's one thing if we did it a few years ago, it would have been more of a whiteboard exercise. And
Mhm.
I think by now we've been parenting for years with the big family. It sort of helps crystallize, okay, what are the few things that are really the most important, right? Because you just got to focus on like, especially the big family. There's just no time or energy to have like an elegant vision. You're
Mhm.
like, okay, when it comes down to it, like the couple things that are really, really important are, for example, love and relationships.
Mhm.
So like you said, telling the truth. Another one is, I would say it's like chores. Like everybody helps.
Kind of own it, own own your chores.
Yeah, everybody helps because especially some kids, there's a couple kids who just hate chores, right?
I'm one of
Our
these
four,
kids. Hello.
yeah, and you know what? And also, we can get kind of mean if you are don't if you don't do them like they because we have if they don't get done like the family doesn't function.
Mhm.
So everyone needs to help. Um, and also taking it's like I would say take the initiative, but you have to handle your business in a way. Like so, part of that's cleaning up after yourself, which again, it's no one's perfect, and that's okay. But we like cleaning up after yourself is important, and people need to do their own stuff. So we'll help them, like our 12-year-old applying to middle school or 18-year-old applying to college. Like we'll push them to do
Mhm.
their and feedback, but like we definitely don't do work for kids.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, I like
Makes total sense. My mother and father also never did this. They always just I could always make my own decisions, and they just said like, "Hey, these are the pros and cons for each decision, and you have to do them yourself." And
yeah
they never really took off any work from me. I think it's super
yeah
important that they actually learn how to do stuff themselves, right?
yeah, and I think it's part of the challenge is for us all the kids are different, and it's what we don't want to do is make it too hard on someone. So it's not about like abdicating responsibility. Like, you need to figure it out and just do it yourself because that doesn't help.
Mm.
It's giving them enough structure or help so they have a fair chance of being able to do it. Right. And so we work on like coaching them or pushing them
Mhm.
or, but it's not about like abandoning them.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
by
yeah.
the way, like we make mistakes all the time because I don't know. Like every day is we're just whatever worked
It's like a
yesterday.
startup, right?
Yeah, every day is a new adventure. What worked last week may not work this week. So part of this, ultimately, like an entrepreneur, is the ability, the confidence. I think one of the most essential things as a parent or an entrepreneur is the confidence that hey, there's something going on. I can figure this out, and it'll be okay, right? And not so. Um, what happened yesterday? There's always some crisis every day or week or month. Like here's a great example. So we have this thing we call the Ross travel curse because whenever we travel as a family, there's some issue,
Drama. Mm.
some drama. The first big family trip to Europe years ago when it was a much smaller family. Um, when it was just two kids and my wife was pregnant. The day before we left, my daughter at the time she was I think 8 and now she's 14. My daughter was scratching her head and discovered lice, right?
Mm.
And it turns out the kids were just infested. Like
Mm.
it was just gobs of lice. So we had to do this, call a lice cleaner. It took all day till midnight the night before the plane flight,
The flight.
right? And we hadn't packed and we had to leave in the morning. It was just right. That was a nightmare. Or the next big family trip a year or two later, where my wife misread the 24-hour clock for the flight,
Mhm. Mhm.
and so we missed the flight. But luckily, my mother-in-law had gone early to the airport, and so there was like a saving. We got saved that time because. So here's what's interesting, by the way. There'll be this crisis, and in that case, luckily my mother-in-law had gone early to the airport. I don't even remember why, and so she caught the issue that the flight left, but she was there and she was able to change our tickets to the next flight. And luckily,
Mm.
they didn't charge us whatever, like 1,000. It was a big change, with it was like 10 people at that point
Wow.
between adults and kids, and so the change fee would have been huge, and they just did it, and the receipts, and it worked out better because when we got to London, I think at the time, like the later flight helped us adjust very easily to jet
Time
lag,
zone change.
right? So one more example. Last week I went to Brazil for work, right? And I left Monday. So I flew from LA to Atlanta. In LA, so I got my I got my passport. And they said, "Hey, where's your visa from Brazil?" And I was like, "Well, I know I have it because I've taken a picture to send." I was doing a workshop. I do paid speaking, so a company hired me to come down, and I'd taken a picture of my visa and sent it, so I knew I had it. And like, there's no visa in here. And I was like, oh shit, because I'd left it. My visa was in my old expired passport.
Okay.
But they said, all right, well, we have a pic. And I had a picture, so they said, all right, that's fine. Like, get on. So I go to Atlanta, connected Atlanta, and get ready to get on the flight to Sao Paulo. And I'm like, well, I didn't have my expired. I got this picture, and they're like, yeah, no, you're not getting on this flight. You need a paper visa. It's like, and this is the same. This is Delta. So, like, so of course I panic because again, I've got, I was getting to Sao Paulo the day before, get a multi-100 person workshop I was leading. Like apparently I'm gonna have like a big thing in Brazil. So, I panic, right? Cause I basically can't get on my flight. I'm like, how do I get, so I'm in Atlanta. How do I get my passport? How do I get a visa? So I can, cause I have to, the next day I have to go. So what ended up happening was I flew my 18-year-old daughter, Vicky, out as a courier. I called my wife. I'm like, you need to get Vicky on a flight in like 2 hours. I'm going to buy a flight, like send her to the airport. And so she took my passport, brought it out. I met her in Atlanta. I just saw her for like 20 minutes and she had to turn around and go home. Probably because she started school. She started 12th grade the next day. And she'd just come back from being in China. And so her time clock was like just crazy. So again, it was a drama. Luckily, I had a couple partners in Brazil, so I did miss some of the events we'd scheduled. There was like a book signing and meetup and panel, so I missed those, but I made it just in time, like the morning of the workshop. So in one sense, part of this is you can have your systems, but there's this sort of like chaos element of unplanned crises that come up. And once you go through these enough, and as an entrepreneur, you see this as well, like once you go through them, what you realize is, okay, we can figure this out. We're going to deal with it. You usually get like, it helps make you stronger or smarter, or whatever it is, or more adaptable, or at least next time you remember to get your damn expired passports and you get over it. And parenting is the same way, because there's some crisis always. There's some, like the baby won't sleep, or your check payment doesn't come in, so you're down on money, or there's always something. And it's not about being, I think, a great parent or human or entrepreneur isn't about of not having problems. It's about how do you deal with the problems, because they always come up. There's always something.
Absolutely. I've actually wrote a lot about this, and also in the course, it really depends. Like, you'll always have problems, but it depends on how you look at them. If you think that's the world is ending, or if you just accept it as what it is and work something out. Especially as an entrepreneur, as a father, you always have to deal with stuff. It's always something, right? There's always some drama that you have to deal with. And the thing that helps me the most is I have a gratitude rock that I pick up every morning, and I go through the things I'm grateful for, and then I have it in my pocket. And sometimes when I still get stressed throughout the day, I feel it, and it brings me back to the all is well state in my head. And when I come home at the end of the day, I go through the things that went great this day. And this kind of doing this ritual for many years made me emotionally very, very strong. So like whatever happens, I can just say, accept it, say, all right, it's okay. We're going to get through it and figure it out somehow.
I should do that.
Really works really, really well. I tell you, after the show, I've told like 3 or 4 times on the podcast already, on the most stressful time of my life and where this got me through. But I don't want to be like a broken record to talk about it over and over again. Have you, since you manage a big team in your family, and do you learn things from this to apply to the team that you manage in your business, or from prior experiences? There's some overlap.
Yeah, there is. I mean, sometimes it's hard to say exactly what. For sure, dealing with more types of people in different situations helps my sense of how to, manage people and when to set boundaries and when not to, like when to give people more freedom and when to set a harder deadline. Um, so I think, I say having lots of kids, it's like a super accelerated life learning system. It's like taking 50 credits at college every quarter or whatever the maximum number is.
Trick is don't sleep.
So, yeah, I mean, definitely we're low on, but that's a lot of the baby. Once the baby gets older, that'll change. So but yeah, that's hard when you have to, for me, because having a big family has been the motivation, or like extreme motivation, to get me to figure out how to grow the business, how to make more money. So that was the other, I don't want to say benefit, but value, where, my father's different, or my father, and I think a lot of people, and I would have been this way too before, which is, how much money do I make? Okay, how many kids can I afford? Versus what we do is, okay, well, for some reason we feel like we want to have a kid, or we're going to adopt, or this, and okay, now how do we make money to cover that? A bit different. But going back to your original question, if there's like one thing that the crossover between having a family and managing people, I'm not sure. Probably it just helps me appreciate the things I have, I guess. What the first thing that comes to mind is, because like the people at work, like I don't, they are vital to my family. So my family's so important. So the thing that changes is just more gratitude and appreciation for the people I work with. So I think that actually is, and it's important, like that empathy, and I've always cared about the people I work with, but it just adds extra. I don't know if you can
Takes
hear
you to another level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear the kids in the background. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always yelling, crying. Yeah, that's pretty much like, yeah, okay, yeah, there's more yelling, crying. Okay, check.
They're alive, so everything's good.
Yeah.
What I mean, I'm always curious what drives people, kind of what's their why for doing what they do, especially in business, kind of why. Now your why is, you just stated, because you have having 11 kids is expensive, especially in Los Angeles. It's still mind-boggling that you can pull this off in Los Angeles.
Yeah. We spend more per month than my wife used to make per year as an executive assistant.
I mean, I can imagine it. 11 kids now.
Yeah.
What was your why before you had the big family? What drove you to grow your business, make more money? Was it just like following the quote unquote American dream of amassing more stuff, or?
Yeah, and well, there's different phases. When a lot of it's always been learning, so it's a combination. So part of it was success, but I've never been too so like really success driven. It's been part of it, but as much as just learning, and I did investment banking out of college, and it paid really well. Investment banking pays really well, and so I was drawn to, wow, I get to make a lot of money, or it's like a status job. But I also thought, wow, I get to learn a lot about business. And after I did it for 2 years, and I had the chance to, they said, of course, I could stay on. The third year I would have made, I don't remember what the amount was, and this is a long time ago. So it was like it was a 6-figure job. So I don't know what in today's dollars, it's probably like, let's go $200,000 for someone who was 24 or 25 years old. And I just didn't want to do it because I was like, I wasn't learning anything. So it's a mix of, success. It's a mix of, I wanted to learn something and do something that's interesting. It's a lot of it. So, but I didn't really, there's certain times where, like for me, the things that really crystallize my motivation are like deadlines and forcing functions. Because I'm the type where if I don't have like a deadline or something very I have to
Pressing.
do, then yeah, I'll meander around.
Mm-hmm.
My wife is different. You know, she's very self-motivated. She's very intrinsically motivated. And I sort of am, I'm sort of not. So I do need, part of this is and this is what I'll do. You know, when I wrote a new book and published it with Jason Lemkin last year, the way I did that was like, there's just no way I was going, with all the kids and everything else going on, there's no way to write a book, but by announcing public deadlines and setting aside time every week, it like forced me to do it because I had to do it. So that works for me. I call them forcing functions.
Yeah,
I'm forced to do it.
One of my questions was like, you said that you only work 25 to 30 hours per week, and you feel that you're most productive. And one question also was like, how do you deal with stress? But it sounds like that your personality just performs under stress, and you kind of have to self-inflict this on yourself to, to produce.
Yeah, I handle stress pretty well. I think I'm calm. I'm the level-headed person. So there's definitely a lot of stress in the business, but more motivating stress like deadlines and then there's some other kinds of stresses that are hard, whether it's like family or sometimes business, like drama. But self-inflicted stress works to motivate me. So it does. And again, that's where deadlines or partners, it also works to have a partner on things. It's a lot easier for me to work with a partner than do it by myself. Even if it's just like a lightweight partner I rarely talk to. There's accountability and accountability deadlines, and it just feels like easier to get some help.
Oh yeah, I can relate. When it's just on me, then different priorities can come up. But if there's somebody else I could potentially let down, I'm just like, no fucking way. I have to perform and do this.
So, well, speaking of big families, I'm gonna have to go down. We got to help with like morning routine, and my wife's going out today all day with my 14-year-old daughter and baby. They're gonna go thrift shopping. So it's one of the challenges is the kids and we appreciate the one-on-one time, which is important. It's hard to make the rounds. So it's rare but important when we do something with one kid, especially a bigger kid.
Mm-hmm.
So they're excited for it today, but I gotta go.
Awesome. I don't want to hold you. Thank you for coming on. This was really, really awesome. I'm still hats off. I can't believe how you're pulling this off. You must be.
Me neither. I don't know. Like
just do it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times people, I think, like, how do you do it, or what do you do that's different? And again, I probably work 20 hours a week because I can't work more than that just with all the kids now. But a lot of days I'm not really sure what I do. It just figured out day by day. I mean, that's honestly, I'm sure there's more systems and approaches, but that's a lot of it. Is I just take it step by step. I don't have a better answer, honestly. I go for it. Like we commit, we're going to have a kid or we're going to go on a trip, and then we just make it happen somehow, step by step.
Aaron, it was really awesome. Thank you for taking the time. I have like a laundry list of more questions for you, but I'll let you go. Family first.
Yeah, I'll do part 2 someday.
Yeah. Awesome, man. All right.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, David. Real pleasure here.
Take care, man. Bye.